Hi, I'm Alex Caravello from Landlord's Rent. Welcome back for part 6 of our mini-course on how to maximise your rental profits. In the last video, we looked at how to manage your suppliers. In today's video, we're going to discuss how to manage rent arrears and take legal action. In the third video of this mini-course, we discussed getting paid, in full and on time, using Landlord's Rent direct debit rent collection. I can't stress enough how valuable an effective rent collection service is to the bottom line of your property rental business. It will go a long way to stopping rent arrears developing in the first place. However, when the worst does happen, you need to know the best ways to ensure you receive the rent that you are legally entitled to. Firstly, make sure you know on each rent payday whether the rent has been paid or not. If you're using Landlord's Rent direct debit rent collection service, you will simply check your online account every day and run a failed collections report, immediately identifying any rent collections that have failed and the reason why. As discussed in the earlier video, if your tenant cancels their next direct debit rent payment at any time, you will know the same day and will be able to take immediate action. If you're still collecting your rents by your tenant's standing order, then you'll need to reconcile your bank statements with your schedule of due rent payments on a daily basis. If you find that your rent hasn't been paid on the due day, you might need to wait another day or two to be certain that the payment has failed, or whether the bank has simply delayed payment for whatever reason. When you are 100% satisfied that a rent payment has failed, you need to contact your tenant immediately. You may find that your tenant gives a very plausible excuse as to why you haven't received your rent. For example, that the money has definitely left their account, so it must be a bank error at your end. In any case, it is your tenant's legal obligation to ensure you are paid on the correct day. So if you definitely haven't received the rent, ensure you make this clear to your tenant. If you are using Landlord's Rent direct debit rent collection service, then you'll know the reason for the failed rent collection. For example, due to insufficient funds in your tenant's account. Knowledge is power, and knowing the rent payment has failed and knowing why means that you won't accept any excuses from your tenant and can get down to resolving the problem straight away, rather than allowing your tenant to dictate the timescale of your rent collection enforcement. I always telephone the tenant on the rent payday if their rent collection has failed and then follow it up with a letter. I do this to make sure that the failed rent payment is documented and on record in case I need to justify any future enforcement or eviction action. As a matter of policy, my letter offers to waive any interest or penalties if they clear their rent arrears within 14 days. Otherwise, they will be applied to their account. By the way, if you are using Landlord's Rent direct debit rent collection service and have contractual penalties or interest written into your tenancy contract, then you're entitled to apply to collect these sums by direct debit. The first thing you need to do is to agree with the tenant the reasons behind why the rent payment has failed. If they're having cash flow problems, you need to ask, what can you pay me now and when can you get the rest to me? You need to establish if it's a case of can't pay or won't pay. If it's can't pay, then you need to try to be as understanding and objective as possible, whilst always remembering that you are legally entitled to your rent. I make sure I help tenants by stopping them develop rent debts, meaning that they don't end up facing eviction and even more headaches. If it's a case of won't pay, then you will need to take a different approach. I normally tell tenants that I need them to convince me that they can't pay rather than won't pay, and the only way they can do this is to pay me something now and keep paying me small amounts regularly until the debt is repaid. Otherwise, I class them as won't pay and will take legal action at the earliest possible opportunity. When it comes to dealing with late rent payment, I find that honesty is the best policy. By the way, if you threaten something like legal action, always see it through. Otherwise, the tenant may see you as a soft touch and take you for a ride. If necessary, I will visit the tenant the same day to collect in cash whatever they can afford to pay in order to mitigate the arrears situation. If for whatever reason your tenant hasn't paid their last month's rent in full within 2 weeks of it becoming due, I recommend that you write to them again, detailing your attempts to collect payment and their response to your requests. If there are any sums remaining outstanding after 3 weeks, I issue a Section 21 notice of eviction before the next rent payday, followed by a Section 8 notice of eviction if applicable. A Section 21 notice of eviction can be served without reason and at any time. A Section 8 notice of eviction is normally served when the tenant has 8 weeks or 2 months rent arrears, although it can be served under different circumstances. For a full explanation of when and how to serve the different types of eviction notice, go to www.landlordaction.co.uk and read their frequent questions. Landlord Action, founded by Paul Champlina in 1999, is the industry's leading fixed-fee rent recovery and tenant eviction service. If you want any advice whatsoever on how to recover rent arrears or start eviction proceedings, call Landlord Action on 0333 240 9770 for free, honest, impartial advice. If you're a member of the National Landlords Association, you'll also receive a £20 discount on the tenant eviction service. Explain to the tenant that the eviction notice may not be enforced, so long as the rent gets paid soon or an agreed payment plan is followed. Keep lines of communication open wherever possible, and a visit to the tenant at this point could be useful. If your tenant doesn't keep to the agreed payment plan, legal action should immediately follow. You must decide whether to take possession proceedings under Section 8, claiming rent arrears, or go for what will probably be the quicker route and take accelerated possession proceedings under Section 21, whilst attempting to recover the rent arrears separately through a county court claim. Again, unless you're an experienced landlord, or even if you are an experienced landlord, I suggest consulting Landlord Action on 0333 240 9770 to discuss which eviction route to follow and why. At this stage, update any guarantor that a claim is coming and the amount. Also, get your house in order. Gather as much information as you can regarding the tenant's current situation, i.e. employment, assets, alternative address, etc., in readiness for enforcing any county court judgments. If you're forced to take legal action, you will probably stop receiving any rent payments from your tenant, meaning the arrears situation will get worse. From now on, time is money, and you must follow through with every action you need to take as soon as possible. Normally, I suggest that it is a false economy to deal with these situations yourself, and that you should employ the services of a rent recovery and eviction specialist, such as Landlord Action. By obtaining a county court judgment against your tenant, you can pursue them indefinitely for rent arrears. If the CCJ is for £600 or more, you can transfer up your judgment to the High Court for enforcement by High Court enforcement officers. Now, High Court sheriffs are far more successful than County Court bailiffs in recovering money claims, as they have certain powers that County Court bailiffs do not, such as the ability to seize assets like vehicles under a writ of FIFA. According to the Ministry of Justice, in 2009, High Court sheriffs typically recovered 93% of enforceable debts, far more than the industry average of 58%. If your tenant has absconded, you'll need to find them by using tracing agents to locate their whereabouts before issuing your claim or taking enforcement action. I've used Sure Group for several years for tracing and enforcement services. They are High Court sheriffs, as well as offering a whole host of other debt collection and legal services. Okay, that's it for today's video. Hopefully this has helped dispel some of your fears and concerns about rent recovery and eviction proceedings. Don't get me wrong, this is a situation best avoided, but when things do go wrong, and they will from time to time, the best thing you can be is forewarned and forearmed, and know exactly what to do and when to do it. Keep an eye on your inbox over the next few days for the last video in this mini course. To your continued success.